Get her here. Now. Ryu Sang-wook's growl made his head of security freeze. On the surveillance monitor, a shadow danced behind the curtains in his penthouse. The same forbidden choreography used by his brother's assassin 3 years ago. His maid wasn't cleaning. She was performing phantom silk movements. Steps only trained operatives know. Before we continue, if you believe people deserve a second chance at life, hit that subscribe button for Ebony and Pearl stories. Only those who side with the powerful crushing the innocent won't. The silk curtains in Ryu Sang-wook's private quarters hung perfectly still in the climate-controlled penthouse. Nix Pemberton moved between them with practiced silence, her microfiber cloth leaving no trace on the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. 3 weeks into this assignment, and she still marveled at how a man could command an empire from a space that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. Every surface gleamed. Every angle precise. Not because anyone lived here, but because control mattered above all else. She checked the security schedule on her phone. The guards had confirmed it twice. Ryu Sang-wook was in Busan, finalizing a territory negotiation with the southern syndicates. She had the entire top floor to herself until sunset. This was her window. Nix slipped in her earbuds and scrolled to a playlist she'd buried deep in her music library, labeled simply Archived. The moment the layered percussion began, traditional Korean drums woven with something darker, something coded, her spine straightened involuntarily. 5 years of training couldn't be erased by a new identity and a cleaning uniform. The duster became irrelevant as her feet found the patterns. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. The movements were fluid, ritualistic, each gesture carrying meaning only a handful of people in the world would recognize. Phantom silk shadow dance wasn't meant for stages or studios. It existed in the spaces between legal and lethal, a language spoken by operatives who moved through the world like ghosts. Nix closed her eyes, muscle memory pulling her deeper into the sequence. She could hear her former handler's voice cutting through the music. Not just movement, Pemberton. Communication. Every pivot is a message. Every turn is intelligence. Her shadow stretched across the silk curtains, performing secrets she'd sworn never to reveal again. The coded hand positions. The evasive pivots. The ritual footwork that marked her as something far more dangerous than a maid with a duster. Lost in the forbidden choreography, she didn't see the red light blinking on the corner camera. Across the city, in a satellite security office within his private tower, Ryu Sang-wook stared at his monitor, replaying the surveillance feed for the 5th time. His expression revealed nothing. Not the shock. Not the rage. Not the impossible recognition burning through his chest. Who is she? He asked, his voice carrying the kind of calm that made seasoned killers nervous. His head of security, Tae-min, consulted his tablet immediately. Nix Pemberton. British Caribbean national. Age 27. Work visa sponsored by Elite Housekeeping International. Background check cleared through 3 independent agencies. She's been assigned to your private quarters for 21 days. No red flags. Ryu's eyes never left the screen as the dark-skinned woman moved with impossible precision through his living space, her shadow dancing across the silk curtains in patterns he'd only seen once before. The night his brother died. He zoomed in, watching the sequence repeat. The pivot at the curtain line. The shadow step that defied normal human movement. The coded hand position that had haunted his nightmares for 3 years. Those movements, he said quietly, his finger tracing the silhouette on the screen. Impossible. Recognition crashed over him like a wave. Rage followed. Then something colder. Calculation. His jaw locked, every muscle in his face going rigid. He looked up at Tae-min, and his tone dropped to a deadly growl that made the security chief take an involuntary step back. Get her here. Now. Should I send? I don't care how you do it, Ryu interrupted, his voice soft and lethal. Bring her to me before she leaves that building. Nix was wiping down the marble countertops in the kitchen when she heard the elevator doors open behind her. Her heart skipped. The elevator was keyed. Only authorized personnel could access this floor. She turned slowly, pulling out her earbuds with deliberate calm, and found 2 men in dark suits standing in the foyer. Their expressions were professionally blank, but their posture screamed enforcement. Miss Pemberton, the taller one said in accented English. Please come with us. Her mind raced through protocols. Stay calm. Don't run. Running confirms guilt. Is there a problem with my work? She asked, keeping her voice steady. Mr. Ryu would like to speak with you. The words hit her like ice water. Ryu Sang-wook wasn't supposed to be in Seoul. He was in Busan. The schedule had confirmed it. Unless the schedule had been a lie. Unless he'd been watching. Nyx's training kicked in. Assess. Adapt. Survive. She couldn't run. Couldn't fight. Not yet. Not without knowing what he knew. Of course, she said, setting down her cleaning supplies with hands that didn't shake. Let me just. Now, Miss Pemberton. The ride down the elevator felt like descending into a grave. The two guards flanked her in silence, and when they reached the underground garage, a black Mercedes SUV waited with its engine running. During the drive through Seoul's evening traffic, Nyx stared out the tinted windows and ran through every possible scenario. Had she been recognized? Had someone from Phantom Silk found her? Had her cover been compromised? Or worse, had he somehow connected her to his brother's death? The SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a sleek high-rise in Gangnam. The guards escorted her through a private elevator that opened directly into a penthouse office with wraparound windows showcasing the city's neon heartbeat. And there, behind a minimalist desk of black marble and steel, sat Ryu Sang-wook. He was younger than she'd imagined, mid-30s, sharp-featured, with dark eyes that seemed to calculate her worth in seconds. Tattoos traced up his neck from beneath his collar, and his hands, resting flat on the desk, bore ink that marked him as someone who'd earned his power through blood. He didn't stand when she entered. Didn't offer pleasantries or pretend this was anything but an interrogation. The guards positioned her in front of his desk and stepped back, blocking the elevator. Ryu studied her in silence, his gaze moving from her face to her hands to her feet, assessing her the way a predator assesses prey. Finally, he leaned forward, his voice deceptively soft. What were you doing behind my curtains? Nyx's mouth went dry, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. Cleaning, sir. It's my job. His expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his gaze. Cleaning, he repeated, making the words sound like an insult. He picked up a tablet from his desk, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. The surveillance footage played in silent accusation, her shadow dancing across the curtains, performing movements that shouldn't exist outside classified circles. Nyx's blood turned to ice. Try again, Ryu said quietly. I listen to music while I work. I move to the rhythm sometimes. It's nothing. Stop. The single word cut through her deflection like a blade. Ryu stood slowly, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate precision. He walked around the desk and stopped directly in front of her, so close she could see the tattoo on his hand, a symbol she recognized from intelligence briefings years ago, the mark of someone who'd killed to protect family. Only a Phantom Silk courier moves like that, he said, his voice dropping into a register that made her bones ache with dread. Nyx's heart stopped. That name. That impossible, buried, classified name that no civilian should ever speak. Ryu leaned in, his eyes burning with something between rage and grief. Who trained you? If you believe innocent people shouldn't be hunted for escaping their past, smash that subscribe button and let the algorithm know you stand against people like the Phantom Silk Guild who destroy lives. Comment what time you're watching this, because only those who side with the hunters won't engage. Don't let Nyx face this alone. Nyx's vision tunneled. The walls of Ryu's office seemed to close in, the panoramic windows suddenly feeling less like luxury and more like a cage suspended above the city. I don't know what you're talking about, she whispered, but even she could hear the lie cracking in her voice. Ryu's expression didn't change. He simply watched her with the patience of someone who'd spent years extracting truth from people far more skilled at deception. Phantom Silk, he repeated slowly, as if teaching her a word she'd pretended to forget. A guild that doesn't exist in any official capacity. A network of operatives who communicate through choreography. Dancers who carry intelligence encoded in movement. Assassins who kill with the same grace they use to perform. He tilted his head, studying her face for micro-expressions. The same organization whose signature footwork was captured on surveillance the night my brother was murdered in his own home. Nyx's hands trembled. She clasped them behind her back, trying to hide the reaction. I'm just a cleaner. I studied dance in London, but I don't know anything about. Lie again. The words were soft, almost gentle, but the threat beneath them was absolute. Ryu leaned against his desk, arms crossed, his tattooed hands visible against the dark fabric of his suit. Lie again, and I'll let my men ask the questions instead. They're not as patient as I am. The two guards behind her shifted slightly, a subtle reminder of her lack of options. Nyx's breath came faster. Her training screamed at her to stay calm, to maintain cover, to give nothing away. But her training had also taught her to recognize when a cover was already blown. I don't know who killed your brother, she said carefully. I swear. But you know the dance. She hesitated a fraction too long. Ryu's jaw tightened. He nodded to the guards. Restrain her. The men moved with professional efficiency, reaching for her arms. And Nyx's body reacted before her mind could stop it. She dropped her weight, pivoted left, and twisted out of their grip with a fluid glide that made both guards stumble forward into empty space. Her feet traced the phantom silk evasive pattern, the same sequence designed to slip past trained fighters without engaging in direct combat. She wasn't trying to escape. She was proving a point. By the time the guards recovered and turned toward her, Nyx had already straightened, standing exactly where she'd been before, except now everyone in the room knew the truth. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryu stared at her, his eyes wide with something between shock and recognition. He pushed off the desk slowly, standing to his full height. You're not a maid, he said quietly. Nyx's shoulders sagged. The last of her cover story crumbled away, leaving only exhausted honesty. No, she admitted. I'm not. Then what are you? Someone who wanted to disappear. Ryu's laugh was bitter. People with your kind of training don't disappear. They get found. They get used. Or they get killed. That's why I came to Seoul, Nyx said, her voice breaking slightly. That's why I took a job cleaning penthouses. I thought if I stayed invisible, stayed quiet, stayed away from anything connected to my past. You thought wrong. Ryu turned away from her, walking to the massive windows overlooking the city. He stood there for a long moment, his reflection ghostly against the neon-lit skyline. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow. I want you to see something. He gestured to the wall behind his desk. A panel slid open, revealing a large display screen. With a few taps on his tablet, grainy surveillance footage began to play. Nyx's heart stopped when she recognized the setting. A luxury apartment, similar to Ryu's penthouse. Night vision. Timestamp. 3 years ago. A man sat at a desk, reviewing documents. Young, handsome, with the same sharp features as Ryu. His brother. The timestamp flickered forward. A shadow moved across the frame. Fluid, deliberate, impossible to track with normal human movement. And then the figure appeared. Masked. Dark clothing. Moving with the exact choreography Nyx had performed behind the curtains. The phantom silk signature sequence. Nyx watched in horror as the assassin approached from behind, moved with precision that spoke of years of guild training, and struck. The violence was swift, clinical, efficient. The brother never had a chance. The assassin turned toward the window, and for a fraction of a second, the camera caught their silhouette mid-escape, the same evasive pivot Nyx had just demonstrated. Then they were gone. The footage ended. Nyx realized she'd been holding her breath. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, not for the stranger on the screen, but for the recognition of a system she'd once been part of. I recognize the style, she whispered. But I don't know who that is. Ryu turned to face her, and she saw raw grief beneath his controlled exterior. But you know the guild. She nodded slowly. Phantom Silk trains more than dancers. Couriers. Spies. Thieves. And yes, assassins. I was recruited young. Trained for years. I thought I was part of something noble. Protecting intelligence, moving information that saved lives. And then I realized the guild wasn't noble at all. They sold intelligence to the highest bidder. They eliminated people who asked too many questions. When I tried to leave. She swallowed hard. They made it clear that leaving wasn't an option. But you left anyway. I ran, Nyx corrected. There's a difference. Ryu studied her face, searching for lies and finding only exhausted truth. How long have they been looking for you? 15 months. And you thought Seoul was far enough? I thought hiding in plain sight, working for someone powerful enough to have his own security infrastructure, might give me cover. She laughed bitterly. Ironic, isn't it? Ryu's expression darkened. He took a step toward her, and this time there was no desk between them. Then they'll come for you, he said quietly. And if they come for you... His jaw tightened. They'll come for me. The words had barely left his mouth when a red light began flashing silently on the display panel behind his desk. All 3 men in the room went rigid. Ryu's head of security's voice crackled through the intercom. Boss, we have a breach. Outer perimeter. East side. Multiple contacts. Movement pattern is unusual. Nyx's blood ran cold. She knew exactly what unusual movement pattern meant. Ryu's eyes locked onto hers, and she saw the question forming before he spoke it. They're here, aren't they? Nyx nodded, her voice barely a whisper. They found me. Subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories if you believe people who escape toxic systems deserve protection, not to be dragged back. Comment, she deserves freedom, if you're standing against the Phantom Silk Guild. Only those who side with hunters and controllers won't engage. The alarm's silent red pulse painted the office in waves of crimson light. Ryu moved to the windows with the controlled urgency of someone who'd survived ambushes before. One of his guards pressed against the glass, binoculars raised toward the adjacent skyscraper. Boss, the man said, his voice tight. East Tower. Rooftop level. I count 6. No, 8 contacts. They're not trying to hide. Ryu grabbed the binoculars and looked for himself. Across the gap between buildings, silhouetted against Seoul's neon glow, stood figures dressed in form-fitting black. Their faces were covered with masks that reflected no light. But it was their stance, perfectly balanced weight distributed like dancers waiting for music to begin, that confirmed Nyx's worst fear. Phantom Silk operatives. Why are they here? Ryu demanded, turning to Nyx. Her voice came out hollow. Because I ran. Ran from what? She met his eyes, and for the first time since entering his office, she stopped hiding. From the same guild that killed your brother. The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Ryu's expression shifted, the cold interrogator replaced by something harder, sharper, more dangerous. He turned to his guards. Lock down the building. Every entrance, every stairwell, every maintenance access. I want armed men on every floor between here and ground level. No one gets in. Yes, boss. The guards moved immediately, speaking rapidly into their radios. Ryu crossed to his desk and pulled open a drawer, retrieving a handgun that he checked with practiced efficiency before tucking it into his waistband. How many will they send? He asked Nyx. For a retrieval? 8 is standard. But if they've classified me as a full defector. She swallowed hard. They won't stop at 8. A sharp crack echoed through the office. The window nearest to Nyx spiderwebbed with cracks, a small impact point at its center. Bulletproof glass. But the message was clear. Ryu moved without thinking. He stepped directly in front of Nyx, his body shielding hers, one hand pushing her back toward the interior wall. Get away from the windows, he growled. More shots followed, controlled, precise, not meant to penetrate but to announce intent. Nyx's back hit the wall, and suddenly she was 15 months in the past, running through London's East End with Phantom Silk hunters on her trail. Flashback. The training facility had been underground, hidden beneath a dance studio in Prague. For 3 years, Nyx had learned to move like water, to carry intelligence encoded in choreography, to slip through security systems using grace instead of force. You're one of our best, her handler had told her. Victor. The man she trusted. The man who'd recruited her when she was 22 and drowning in student debt. Until the night she'd witnessed the sanction. A courier, barely 19, a girl named Sasha who'd asked too many questions about where the intelligence they carried actually went. Nyx had found her in the practice room, 3 senior operatives standing over her body, making it look like a training accident. Victor had been there too. When he saw Nyx in the doorway, he'd simply said, "You have a choice. Join the cleanup, or become part of it." Nyx had run that night. Disappeared into the London underground. Spent months moving between safe houses, changing her appearance, burning every connection to her old life. But Phantom Silk didn't forget. And they never stopped hunting their own. Present. Nyx. Ryu's voice snapped her back to the present. I need to know what they want. She focused on his face, intense, calculating, but not afraid. They want me dead, she said flatly. I witnessed a murder they covered up. I know the names of clients they serve. I can identify their training facility locations. As long as I'm alive, I'm a liability. And now they know you're with me, which makes you a liability too. Ryu's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, swiping through security camera feeds. The rooftop across from them now showed the operatives preparing rappelling gear. How long do we have? Minutes, Nyx said. They'll come from multiple entry points. Windows, roof access, service elevators. They'll move fast and silent. Your guards won't see them until it's too late. My guards are former military. Your guards didn't train with Phantom Silk. Ryu's head of security burst through the stairwell door, breathing hard. Boss, we've got movement in the parking garage. 2 vehicles. They cut our exterior cameras. Ryu cursed under his breath. He looked at Nix, and something in his expression changed. A decision being made in real time. I could hand you over, he said quietly. Trade you for peace. Tell them you broke into my building, that I had no idea who you were. Nix's heart sank, but she nodded. You could. It would be the smart move. The smart move. Ryu laughed bitterly. He stepped closer to her, his voice dropping low enough that only she could hear. The smart move would have been not getting involved with the guild that murdered my brother in the first place. He turned to his head of security. Reinforce the door. Nobody gets through to this floor. If they breach the stairwell, fall back to the secondary position and hold the line there. Boss. Do it. The man nodded and disappeared back through the door. Ryu turned back to Nix, and his eyes burned with something that looked like fury mixed with determination. You're not dying in my house, he said. Why? Nix whispered. You don't know me. You have no reason to. They killed my brother using your guild's choreography. You're the first real lead I've had in 3 years. His hand moved to the gun at his waist. And if they want you dead badly enough to breach my building, then keeping you alive is exactly what I intend to do. Thunder cracked, not from the sky, but from the roof above them. The sound of grappling hooks catching on steel. They were coming. Ryu grabbed Nix's wrist, his grip firm but not painful. Stay behind me, he ordered. The lights in the office flickered once, then went completely dark. And in the darkness, Nix heard it, the whisper-soft sound of phantom silk operatives descending from above like spiders on silk threads. If you believe no one should be hunted for escaping a corrupt system, subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories right now. Comment, stand and fight, if you're on Nix and Ryu's side. Because only those who support the Phantom Silk Guild's murders won't engage. Don't scroll away from this. In the darkness, Ryu moved with lethal precision. He pulled Nix toward a reinforced door hidden behind a panel in the wall. A safe room she hadn't known existed. They slipped inside just as his phone buzzed with an incoming message. Ryu read it, and his face went rigid. What? Nix whispered. Tae-min says the Phantom Silk operatives knew exactly which building to hit, which floor, which office. He looked up from the screen, his jaw clenched. They had a floor plan. Security rotations. Camera blind spots. Nix's stomach dropped. That's not standard reconnaissance. That takes time access. An inside source, Ryu finished darkly. The safe room was small, barely 10 feet square, lined with monitors showing security feeds from throughout the building. Emergency lighting cast everything in dim blue. Nix watched the screens as dark figures moved through Ryu's building like shadows given form. Their movements were unmistakable, the fluid, efficient choreography of Phantom Silk infiltration protocols. They're not just attacking, she said, studying their patterns. They're communicating. Ryu turned to her. What do you mean? Phantom Silk doesn't use radios or phones during operations. Too easy to intercept. They use movement. She pointed to one operative on the screen, whose hand positions shifted in deliberate sequence. That's a signal. He's telling the others the route is clear. You can read it? I was trained in it. Nix leaned closer to the monitor, watching another operative perform a specific turn before entering a stairwell. That one just indicated they found resistance. 3 guards, armed, holding the 20th floor. Ryu's eyes widened. You can decode their entire operation. In real time, yes. But... She hesitated. It also means I know what they're planning. And... Nix met his gaze. They're not searching the building. They already know exactly where we are. As if in response to her words, an explosion rocked the floor below them. Not large, controlled, tactical. Designed to breach a reinforced door. They're 2 floors down, Ryu said, checking another monitor. He pressed his earpiece. Tae-min. Status. The response was drowned in static and gunfire. When the line cleared, his head of security's voice came through breathless. Boss, they're pushing hard. We can't hold the stairwell much longer. These aren't normal fighters, they're trained like... I know what they are, Ryu cut him off. Fall back to position beta. Do not engage directly. He ended the call and turned to Nix, his expression intense. I need everything you know. How they operate. How they hunt. How to stop them. Nyx's hands trembled. Helping him meant betraying every oath she'd taken during her years with Phantom Silk. But those oaths had been built on lies. I can help you, she said quietly. But I need something in return. Name it. I know the assassin's signature pattern, the one who killed your brother. I studied the movements for months trying to figure out who in the guild had that particular style. She took a breath. I never saw their face. But if we survive this, if we get access to Phantom Silk's network, I can identify them. Ryu went very still. You're certain? Every operative has unique tells in their choreography. Like handwriting. I can recognize the assassin by how they move. For a long moment, Ryu said nothing. Then he sank into the chair in front of the monitors, his controlled exterior finally cracking. My brother died because I wasn't there, he said, his voice raw. I was in Tokyo, closing a deal that didn't matter. He called me 3 times that night. I didn't answer because I was in a meeting. He looked down at his tattooed hands. By the time I called back, he was already gone. Nyx saw the guilt eating at him. Familiar, suffocating guilt she recognized from her own reflection. If I find the assassin, Ryu continued, I find the truth. I find out why he died. Who ordered it? What he knew that made him a target. And you get justice, Nyx added softly. I get closure. He looked up at her. Help me find them, and I'll protect you from Phantom Silk. My resources, my network, my men. Whatever it takes to keep you alive. Nyx's choice crystallized in that moment. She could stay silent, hope to survive alone, and spend the rest of her life running. Or she could fight back against the organization that had turned her into a weapon, and then try to destroy her for walking away. I'll help you, she said. We take down the guild together. Ryu extended his hand. She took it. The handshake sealed an alliance born in darkness and desperation. Ryu's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted from determination to shock. No, he breathed. What is it? He turned the phone toward her. A message from an encrypted number. The British girl wasn't hard to find. Your head of security is very cooperative when properly motivated. Nyx's blood went cold. Victor. You know who sent this? My former handler. He's the one who's been hunting me. She looked at the security feeds, her mind racing. Tae-min. Your head of security. When did you hire him? 6 months ago. Came highly recommended from. Ryu's face darkened as realization hit. From a security consulting firm I'd never used before. Phantom Silk plants are embedded years in advance, Nyx said. They knew you'd eventually be useful. Or vulnerable. The sound of boots echoed in the corridor outside the safe room. Not Ryu's guards. Too light. Too synchronized. Nyx watched the monitor showing the hallway. 8 operatives approached in perfect formation. And then she saw it. The lead operative's hand signals. Her stomach twisted. Ryu, she said, her voice tight. They're not here to take me. He stood, drawing his weapon. Then what? Nyx turned to face him, and he saw genuine fear in her eyes for the first time. They're here to kill us both. Subscribe to Ebony and Pearl Stories if you stand against betrayal and corruption. Comment, no one fights alone. If you believe Nyx and Ryu deserve to survive this together. Only those who side with traitors like Victor and Tae-min won't engage. Which side are you on? The safe room door exploded inward with a shaped charge that filled the small space with smoke and ringing silence. Ryu fired twice through the haze, forcing the first operative back. He grabbed Nyx's arm and pulled her through the secondary exit, a narrow corridor that led back into the main office space. Stay low, he shouted over the chaos. They emerged into a war zone. Ryu's guards had formed a defensive line near the elevator bank, taking cover behind overturned furniture. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness in strobing bursts. But the Phantom Silk operatives moved like smoke, rolling, pivoting, closing distance with movements too fluid to track. They're flanking left, Nyx shouted, watching an operative use a sequence she recognized. 2 coming through the glass shattered as 2 figures crashed through the window on rappel lines, landing in perfect synchronized rolls. Ryu's men turned to engage, but Nyx saw the next move before it happened. Down! She screamed. The operatives dropped low and swept outward, a signature Phantom Silk dispersal pattern. The guards' shots went high, and before they could adjust, the operatives closed distance with brutal efficiency. 2 guards went down. Ryu fired at the nearest operative, forcing them behind a marble pillar. How do we fight what we can't predict? You don't predict them, Nick said, her training overriding her fear. You predict me. She watched the lead operative move across the office, a tall figure whose footwork sent ice through her veins. The pivot. The weight distribution. The way they turned on the ball of their foot rather than the heel. She knew that signature. Ryu, she breathed. The lead operative. That's them. Them who? The one who killed your brother. Ryu's head snapped toward the figure moving through the shadows. His eyes went dark with 3 years of grief and rage compressed into a single moment of recognition. You're sure? I've studied that pattern for months. I'm sure. Ryu didn't hesitate. He moved toward the operative with lethal focus, firing twice to force them into the open. The operative spun away from the shots with impossible grace, and Nick saw it clearly now, the exact same evasive sequence from the surveillance footage. It's you! Ryu shouted, advancing. The operative paused, tilting their masked head. Then they performed a gesture Nix recognized immediately. A mocking salute from the Phantom Silk combat protocols. Acknowledgement. Challenge. Invitation to engage. Ryu charged. The operative met him not with a gun, but with movement. They flowed around his attack, redirecting his momentum, using his aggression against him. It was like watching a dance with lethal intent. Every step calculated, every turn purposeful. Nix moved without thinking. She slid into the space beside Ryu, her body falling into the counter patterns she'd learned years ago. Where the assassin pivoted left, she was already moving right. Where they dropped low, she anticipated the recovery. Together, she and Ryu forced the operative back toward the shattered windows. Who sent you? Ryu demanded. Who ordered my brother's death? The operative said nothing, but their next movement sequence was deliberate, exaggerated. Nix's eyes widened. They're communicating. That's not combat, that's a message. What message? Before Nix could answer, the operative threw a flash grenade. The office exploded in blinding white light. When Nix's vision cleared, the assassin was gone, rappelling down the side of the building on a line that hadn't been there seconds before. Ryu rushed to the window, but the operative had already vanished into Seoul's neon-lit maze. No! Ryu slammed his fist against the frame. The remaining Phantom Silk operatives retreated in synchronized withdrawal, disappearing like shadows at sunrise. Within seconds, the office fell silent except for the ringing alarm and the groans of wounded guards. Taemin's voice crackled weakly over a dropped radio. Boss. I'm sorry. They made me. Ryu picked up the radio, his expression cold. You made your choice. He crushed it under his heel. Nick stood at the window, replaying the assassin's final sequence in her mind. The exaggerated movements hadn't been random. They'd been deliberate communication. The message, she said quietly. I know what it meant. Ryu turned to her. Tell me. It was a location marker. Phantom Silk uses choreography to encode coordinates. She closed her eyes, reconstructing the sequence. A building. South of the river. I think they're telling us where to find the truth about your brother. Or it's a trap. Probably both. Sirens wailed in the distance. Seoul Metropolitan Police would arrive soon, asking questions neither of them could answer honestly. Ryu holstered his weapon and looked at Nix, really looked at her. Not as a suspect. Not as a liability. As someone who'd just fought beside him and survived. I could turn you over to the authorities, he said. Wash my hands of this. Go back to my business. You could, Nix agreed. But I won't. He stepped closer. I need you to help me track them. Decode their messages. Find the assassin. Destroy the guild that killed my brother. That's not a small ask. And in return, I'll protect you. My resources. My network. Everything I have goes toward keeping you alive and taking them down. Nix looked at the man before her. Tattooed hands, sharp eyes, the weight of command and grief in equal measure. 24 hours ago, he'd been a name in a file, a dangerous man to avoid. Now he was offering her something she hadn't had in 15 months. An ally. Not as your maid, she said. No. Not as your prisoner. No. As your partner. Ryu extended his hand. As my partner. She took it, and this time the handshake felt different. Not desperate. Not temporary. Solid. They stood together at the shattered window, looking out over Seoul's glittering expanse. The bullet dent in the glass caught the city lights. A permanent scar from the night everything changed.